And we are live. Thank you for joining us in the Storycraft Cafe. I'm your host, Hank Garner, and today I have, it's always such an honor and a pleasure to get to talk with Bob Salvatore, one of my favorite writers of all time. And, we've gotten to do this quite a bit over the last couple of years, and it's always fun and something new. Bob, welcome to the show, first off.
Hey, it's great to be back, Hank. Thanks for having me back on.
Absolutely. Bob, 2 new books this summer? That's crazy even for you.
Well, back it up. Okay. The Tao of Dritz is really Dritz's journal. So most of that's been written over the last 35 years.
Right.
I didn't have to do much for that except help dig them all up and put them all together. And, it wasn't like I wrote a new book. These are the essays from Homeland through the book that's coming next year. Okay. I think it's next year. Um, it just seemed like people have been asking for this for a long, long time. It just seemed like the right time to do it.
Well, Drizzt is one of those characters and he's been talked about endlessly about the dichotomy that he is as a character. He's a drow, someone that most people just assume to be one way, and he does everything he can to go against his nature or his perceived nature.
His
However,
nurture, his
it
nurture.
right. So, well, this is like been a 35-year exploration of nature versus nurture, hasn't it?
And individual agency. Reasoning beings have a choice. Period. And in my books, and this is the funniest thing about the books is that you're told by the narrators in the books on the surface that the Drow are evil.
Right.
And since they're humans, they're people that you can relate to, you just go with that. But the truth of it is, if you read my books from the very beginning, Dritz wasn't the only Drow who was not evil.
Right.
Zachnafane, Virna, and Jarlaxle. These are people just trying to survive in a ruthless society that's an autocracy ruled by a demon, an eternal demon queen. They can't leave. Dritz isn't unique in that he went against them. He's not even unique that he left. He's unique that he left and survived the Underdark and came up and found friends. And he's not even really unique in that. He's just the most well known. As I went back and did generations, we made it quite clear that even back before Dritz was born, Dabney, the priestess of Loth, hates Loth. Didn't understand why she was still getting her spells. Zachnafane hates Loth. Jarlaxle hates Loth. Everyone in Breaking-Durth hates Loth. Half the priestesses hate Loth. But look at it this way. If you have a dictatorship that is completely isolated, the only news you get, the only thing you know about the other societies is what the dictator and her minions tell you. And you will do what you need to do to survive. And in my books, from the very beginning, the barbarians of 10 Towns attacked 10 Towns, attacked the dwarves. They would have killed everyone there if they won.
Right.
Is that not evil? The magistrates in Luskan were torturing people for the pleasure of the watching crowd. That not evil? So there is good and evil. Those are real concepts, and there are lines. But the perception of good and evil is very often decided by which ones are on my side and which ones are on the enemy's side. So Americans can go and cheer Red Dawn, but then condemn people that fight back when we're in their country. And the Dritz books are about agencies. I'm going to get rid of McAfee. It just keeps popping up on my screen. I didn't even install it. I didn't think it was a virus. I thought it was an antivirus. Anyway, the Dritz books are about individual agency. They're about doing the right thing. Period. Not what tradition tells you you're supposed to do, and not what Loth tells you you're supposed to do, but just doing the right thing.
Yeah. I didn't know that we were going to get into this conversation so quickly, but let's just jump right in. Your latest trilogy has had some readers up in arms about some things that you're trying to expose, some things that you're trying to bring to the forefront of people's understanding, and and you know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
But what you're saying, and looking back over your body of work, you've been saying it all along. People just
There's
didn't want to
nothing
see what you have
different.
been saying all along.
Well, look, there's a whole bunch of people in this country, probably in other countries as well, that drive to work and put on radio stations whose hosts are there to get you mad. That's what
Right.
their job is.
Well, it's what
Because
social media is all about.
anger is addictive.
Right.
It lights up the same part of your brain as porn. It's addictive. If you're listening to your local sports radio, one of the hosts will say something about like up here about the Patriots. That is the dumbest thing you ever heard in your life. And you wonder, how did this guy get to be a broadcaster or a sports journalist if he's that stupid about the game? He's not. He wants you to know, wait a minute, I have to correct him. Let me call. And now the light goes on. And now the revenues come in from the advertisers. It's a business, it's a scam. And that's what cable news is. And I'm not pointing my finger in either direction here, okay? I'm
Well, they're
saying
both
that's
pretty
what
good at it.
cable news is there to get you angry.
Yeah.
It's there to make you outraged about things that don't even affect your life, because it's there to get you to watch cable news. It's profit. It's for profit. And so you talk about the latest book. I thought the latest book, well, not the latest, not Glacier's Edge, but Starlight Enclave.
Yeah.
Starlight Enclave was planned 20 years ago. Not the particulars, but 20 years ago, I knew that Dritz had to find a society of drow elves that were not Lothian elves, so that he could forever get rid of the idea that it's my nature.
Right.
I knew that 20 years ago. The books have been about that from the very beginning.
From the very beginning.
But what happened was, I mean, let's be real. How many people came to Glacier's Edge? When I wrote that, I mean, Starlight Enclave, when I wrote that book, I wanted the people to be as shocked as Jarlaxle, Catti-brie, and Truri and Zaknafane were when they saw the bows pointed at them in the glacier. What are you doing up here? The only one that had a clue that that could be going on up there was Jarlaxle. Right?
Right.
I wanted the reader to be shocked. But let's be real. 3 months before the book came out, the website came out, all the marketing came out, the announcements came out that were changing the drow. And I was, wait till after the book's out. Let people read the book organically.
Right.
But, they have different needs than I had. So I'm not mad or anything about it. But it's amazing to me that when you go and look at and I don't look at many reviews at all, but I was curious with Starlight Enclave. It's political.
Yeah.
The 1-star reviews, they're political reviews.
It's ridiculous.
It is, but I understand it, because you have people who feel like the world that they were told as isn't. Right? The game books have called drow evil, monsters. They were the monster man. They're not. So I understand the discomfort level. But organically is how you correct that, in my opinion. It's always been my opinion that that's how you do it. You don't tell people you're wrong. You just show them a logical procession of events, a logical path to continue the message that you began in the very first book you wrote.
Well, and haven't we always believed that the best way to get your point across most of the time is through couching it in story? by when you tell someone a story, that's a much more powerful device than just hitting someone over the head with it. And I thought we all understood that.
Um, yeah, but again, you add cable news, talk radio to Twitter, Facebook, and you're screwed. It's like my son said of Facebook. He goes, Facebook provides you a service so that they can make money off you while making your life noticeably worse. And I don't know if that's true for everybody using Facebook, because I know a lot of people who use Facebook and it's just to share family photos and things.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, you will see people, everyone in this country has a fight fix, right? They have this, you got to get in a fight. You got to get in a fight. And it's insane. It's an insane way to live your life. It's an insane way to live your life, to be angry about things that don't even affect you.
Yeah.
But that's what we're being driven to for profit. And
Yeah.
that's my I studied communication. I saw what was going on 22 years ago, and I told my wife exactly where this was going. And now you see it in full bloom. I just drove across the country out to California and back. And we had took the southern because it was winter. So, here's this Massachusetts left of center. I just want everything to work well for everybody.
Right. Right.
But left of center, sure. And if you go by the internet or listen to Fox News or listen to MSNBC, you would have sworn that I was going into hostile territory with a Massachusetts license plate when I'm going through rural Virginia, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Texas, right? The people were freaking awesome all the way. They were awesome about the masks. Some were wearing them, some weren't. There was no arguments. There was no people that noticed the license plate on my car were like, "Oh, wow, you're a long way from home." Yeah, where you going? I'm heading out to California for the winter. Oh, wow, that's a heck of a drive. Yeah, I'm having a blast, right? The people were awesome. The people in Tennessee were wonderful. The people in Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana were wonderful. Texas has the most polite drivers in the world. They really are. Helpful. The internet's not real.
Right.
Cable news isn't real.
It's hilarious.
And by
We
the way, I spent my nephew came back. He went around the country with his family. He came back, and he's very Christian. He's right wing, much more conservative than I am. We had a discussion for like 4 hours last night after our softball game. I love this kid. He teaches me things. I teach him things. We are nothing but respectful. Nothing but respectful. We argue policy, but we don't argue. We try to teach each other.
right.
That's how I am with Tracy Hickman. We're the same way. We're best friends. He's my brother. Don't get mad about things that aren't hurting you.
Dude, right. Exactly. And the only reason we get to have, dust ups about this stuff is because we have a character with the longevity that Drizzt has. Did you ever imagine 35 years ago? And you've told me the story before about how, you just created him. I think you said you were in the car, maybe.
No, I was at work. I was at
Or you
work.
were at work, and you just said to to whoever on the phone, "Oh, his name is Drizzt," and and da 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 da,
He's
and
dressed the word of Damon of Shez burn on the 9,000 men's of Baron Zan. I
right.
said, "What's that?" I said, "I don't know."
I don't know.
She said, "How do you spell it?" I said, "I don't know." Yeah, it was off the
Figure it
top
out.
of my head.
Yeah.
No, I thought the Crystal. I got hired to do a book,
Right.
not 3 books, not 38 books about the character. 39 I'm writing now. I had to write a book, but I liked it, and so at the end of the book, I put a couple of hooks in. They gave me another book, and the books were doing really well, so they gave me another book. Yeah, no, I didn't think this was going to go this long at all.
Did
Kidding?
did this idea of nature versus nurture, like how soon in your creating the character and building these stories around him, how soon did that hook come to you?
Oh, that's the whole point of it. The whole point of it. Um, the Racism is stupid.
Yeah.
It's self-defeating. It's limiting of civilization. It makes no sense. I mean, why don't we just judge people by whether or not they have hair, Hank?
Please don't.
um, no, I believe in individual agency. I believe that you are responsible for what you do. After the age of 18, you're an adult. You are responsible for what you do. Um, and it's not racial. You are influenced by culture. You are influenced by your upbringing. You are influenced by all that stuff, but you are responsible for what you do. And there is an inner guide in everybody that tells when you're doing something wrong. You know when you're cheating. You know when you're hurting someone. You know these things. You don't have to be told.
Right.
You don't need a book, a religious book to tell you what's wrong. You know. And that's not a knock on religion, because I would never knock anyone on religion. That's the thing I love the most about this country. You want to believe in something, believe in something. You want to believe in that, believe in that. You want to believe in that, believe in that. Just don't hurt anybody.
Right. Our friend Doug has a question. How do you keep ideas for the same characters fresh after so long? I feel like so many series these days burn out much more quickly than Drizzt ever will for me. You keep going back to the well time after time, and do you ever pull your bucket up and it's just not full of water?
No, because here's the thing: with those characters that I created in 1987 and since, I was 29 years old. I was 28 years old when I wrote The Crystal Shire. I'm 63 now. I'm a very different person. Back then, I thought I knew everything, and my job as an author was to tell you.
Right.
And now I'm 63 and I know I don't know anything. And my job is to write something that may be thought provoking enough for you to go find your own answers, because we're all just muddling through and trying to find our answers. And that's what I do. So the characters are changing in the same way that I've been changing over the years. In fact, when I don't know, like 15 years ago, whatever it was, Wizards decided to take all the Drizzt stories and do the collected stories of the Legend of Drizzt. And it was the book was, I had to write like a one page where I was, what I was thinking, why I was writing the short story. And I don't generally go back and read my work because I'm always pushing forward. But I had to read the short stories. And I realized when I was reading the short stories, it was like looking at a family photo album, right? Because I would read the story and I would know exactly where I was when I wrote it, what I was thinking, and why I wrote it. Even stories that were like 10 years old, 12 years old. And that's when I realized, I think I always knew it, but this is when it became crystal clear to me that writing is just how I make sense of them. So as I'm changing, the questions I'm asking my characters are changing with me. Therefore, the characters have to change with me to keep up with the questions. And so,
Um,
no, it's as fresh to me now as it was then.
when you went
Except for
back,
the fight scenes, you can only describe scimitars so many ways.
right?
Although Glacier's Edge has the best battle scene I've put in a book in maybe ever. The end of that book is one of the most intricately choreographed, uh, wild, diverse battle with all kinds of different friends and enemies. I had so much fun writing that book.
And speaking of that, like when you're planning out a fight scene, how do you work out the details in your mind? How do you choreograph it in your mind to bring it to the page?
I watch it happen and I write it down. It's a joy. It's a joy. And I'll change. I mean, I don't have like an outline of the fight scene. I know how I want it to end. That's it.
Yeah.
And then I just let the battle go, and weird things happen. Like I just wrote a battle in the book I'm writing, and somebody got maybe dead. I'm not sure yet. I did not expect that.
Axel says, "Do you ever listen to the audiobook to see if the voice you hear when you hear the voice of Drist, does that match what you're thinking, or does that just kind of make things convoluted to
No,
hear
I've
someone's
listened. I love
interpretation?"
Victor. I love Victor Bavine. I love Tim Garrett Reynolds, who does my Demon War books. I love what Graphic Audio did with a lot of my books with the movie In Your Mind. And
Yeah.
I'll listen to them occasionally, just parts of them. I won't, I probably don't go through the whole book. I know how it's going to end. But no, it's that doesn't change. It doesn't change the what's in my mind for the voice any more than the book covers change what my image of the characters are. I'm thrilled that other people are interpreting what I've done, whether it's an artist painting a picture or the artists, the audio artists like Victor, who are doing the voices. So no, it doesn't. It like is it Drizzt or Drizzit or Drizzed? I call him Fred most of the time. I don't care. Uh, the only one was a C.S. Lewis said the only person who can determine the relationship between a reader and a book is the reader of the book. I live by that. I don't care what you want to call him. Call him Drizzle. That's what my boss used to call him. I don't care. Just enjoy the damn book.
Right. Right. Speaking of looking back through the family album, that is the body of work that you've created. When you're putting together the Tao of Drizzt, did you ever look back and maybe not remember exactly what was there, and were you ever surprised by the things that come out of Drizzt's mouth?
All the time. I just did e-signings, and sometimes people will want a Dritz quote in the e-signing, so they write the quote and they would like me to put it in the book. And I'm like, did I really write that? I see it on Twitter. Someone will put a quote up, and I go, hey, I kind of like that. Oh, I wrote that? Really? Hey, that was pretty good. Yeah, I have an old man's brain now. I don't remember anything.
Well, but there's
That's why
something.
everything's fresh, right? I don't remember anything.
Right. But there is something weird that happens. We kind of jokingly say it's the magic of writing, that sometimes when you get into that flow state of writing, things come out that you read back and go, wow, was I responsible for that? That sounds like
Or
something
you go, wow, did I
better
really
than I.
write that? Holy crap. Yeah, yeah.
Well, there's that
It,
side
it,
too.
it is, writing is like, I get asked questions, how big do you outline? I do like 2-page outline, start writing and throw it away. I'm a pantser. I write by the seat of my pants. I don't know what's going to happen on the next page a lot of times. And that's what makes it fun for me. And when I'm writing, the words just start pouring out as I get into scenes, as I get deeper into the scene and deeper, like in the fight scene or the essays, I get deeper into them. The words just start pouring out. And then I'll go back and edit it. But I don't do big edits. It's pretty much what you're seeing is 95+% the first draft because I like it and I think it's honest.
Ha-
Um,
Has your process always been that clean, or is it
well, when
something
the
you've
editors
worked
have
that way?
allowed it, some editors really want to pound you. Early on, I got pounded. I deserved it. Made me a better writer. But now, yeah, it's. When I turn in the manuscript, they know it's going to be a clean manuscript.
Yeah. Does there come a point in your author career where you become more confident in your voice? Like, something that a lot of beginning writers deal with is holding that manuscript close to you, and kind of the fear of sharing it with people, and maybe the fear is being exposed as a
Of course,
fraud, or
of
you know
course.
that when does that transition point happen, when you become confident in your voice?
Confidence, the wrong word. Look, being a writer, when you're in second grade and you write something and you
Yeah.
pass it and you think you just wrote the best thing that was ever written and it comes back with red marks all over it. That's being a writer every day. But what happens is once you've been doing it long enough, you understand the behind the scenes and you realize some of the bad things people are saying are so ridiculous and so agenda driven and have nothing to do with you that you don't take it personally. And you
Yeah.
realize that half the things people are giving you tremendous credit for are things they're bringing to the book that you didn't even think of. Okay? You are being privileged to allow your voice to go into somebody else's life, and their judgments are the only thing that matters to them with the book. I remember when Kingdoms of Amalur came out, the game that
Yeah.
38 Studios did. Wonderful game. And I know the process that big, huge games had to go through to get that game out on time, under budget. put it in a world they didn't even know when they started. We had to bring them into the world and do all these quest lines. I know how much work they put into this game. From Grant doing the music to the narrative team to the design team to the technical teams, they worked their butts off and they produced a game that a lot of people love. And one of the reviews I read, a review came out on the game, and I think it was Kurt sent to me. Did you see this? And I look at the review and I'm like, this is the best review ever. The guy trashed the game and did a psychoanalysis on me to talk about why the writing failed here, and here. I didn't write the game, but the guy hated me, so he went after the game because he thought I had written the game. I didn't write anything in the game. I edited some of the quest lines. By editing, I mean I told the writers, maybe I would try doing this a little bit, but very minimal. I wish I had written the game. It's freaking brilliant. Some of the quest lines had me in tears. I didn't write that, but this guy went after me and used the game to prove his points about me, a guy I've never met. And that's when you begin to realize half the people that you're reading, you think of the expert critics, it's just garbage. I mean, when I started writing in this genre, Kirkus used to attack me. Locust used to attack me, Margaret Weiss, Tracy Hickman, Ed Greenwood. They hated us because we weren't New York publishers. We weren't CIFO. We weren't in their club. They hated us. Well, then you get in the club and they love you for doing the same things you were doing when they hated you. It's just bullshit. It's why I don't. I'm still not in that. I don't get nominated for awards. I keep them. You know, I'll get like I got the San Diego Comic-Con gave me a Lifetime Achievement Award. That meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
Because those kind of awards mean a lot to me. I've won a lot of awards, but not genre awards from the genre groups because of those early experiences. I just never joined the groups because I don't care. It's like, go back to Glacier's Edge. I mean, to Starlight Enclave. You see reviews from people who are, it's purely political reviews. Well, how did you ever like my books?
Right.
But don't accuse me of changing. I haven't changed. Have you? Well, if you're driving to work, listening to talk radio, and you're coming home and putting on your favorite cable news show all day, and you're burying yourself in that stuff, yeah, you've changed. I'm sorry, you've changed. You're seeing the world through a prism you shouldn't be. And it's making you miserable, and I feel bad for you.
Yeah. The echo chambers can be strong, for sure.
And they hurt you.
Yeah.
So it's not that you get confident, it's that you no longer give a crap. I don't care. I'm writing the book the way I want to write the book. And if enough people keep wanting me to write the books, I get to keep writing books and getting paid for it. But even when that's over, I'll be writing books, even if I'm not publishing them, because it's how I make sense of the world. So I don't care. You know, the shots don't bother me, and the overblown reviews in the positive don't. Keep your feet on the ground. Just keep doing what you're doing. Recognize the privilege that you have of doing something that's allowing you to go in and affect other human beings and their lives, hopefully positively.
Yeah.
If it's not positively, by the way, change the channel. Go read different books.
Right.
If you're not enjoying what you're reading, don't read it. If you're not enjoying what you're watching on TV, change the channel. Right.
Right.
And so that's the way I look at it now. It's not about whether you like my book or don't like this installment, or love this installment or don't like this installment. This is the next installment. It's like when I wrote the book Spine of the World about Wolfgar having gone through the torture and the abyss. Now he's back.
Right.
When I finished that book, I sent it to my editor and I said, half the people are going to love this book and half the people are going to hate this book. And there's not going to be anything in the middle, and there's nothing I can do about it because this book needs to be told for the story of Wolfgar going forward. And sure as heck, the book came out and a whole bunch loved it and a whole bunch hated it. But I don't care, because this is the story I have to tell. You want to come along? Come along. You don't.
Right.
So it's not confidence. It's an understanding the difference between what you're doing and what you can control.
Bob, I I really want to talk to you about world building,
Yeah,
and Doug has posted a question that I think is a great transition question. So he says, not necessarily about writing, but what has the recent resurgence of D&D been like for someone who has been such a big part of stories in the Forgotten Realms? Um, my two sons recently, well, in the last couple of years, have really gotten into D&D, and my oldest son, who's an English teacher, is DMing his first game right now,
perfect.
and so I get to casually drop things like, oh, I know Bob Salvatore. He's been on our show a couple of times, and heads explode, and that's a fun thing that I get to do. But you came in to the Forgotten Realms in the 80s, and you had this story idea, and you're taking a character whose character class had already been established, and but you're going to do something different with it. So you know, some fantasy authors just make up fantasy worlds out of whole cloth.
I do that.
You do that, and but you also inherited a certain amount of that, but then have taken what you inherited and expanded enormously. And you really could say that you've established the Salvatore verse in a lot of respects. But first off, to Doug's question, how do you feel about the new resurgence of D&D and this whole new audience that's discovering the stuff that we've loved for 35 years?
I think it's great. I think it's absolutely great because it's look, um, escapism is not a bad word. When you live in a world of 8 billion people where you can't control anything, being able to go hang out with your friends and control the fate of a world in a game is a blast. Um, it puts people around the table together or around the computer screens hooking up in a positive way,
Yeah,
right? I think it's fantastic. And I also think what's really fantastic about it is that the groups, well, first of all, the stigma's gone, right? You
yeah,
know, if you're watching Stranger Things, and I'm sure most of the people listening have watched Stranger Things,
yeah,
the Hellfire Club, that was kind of extreme. Most people I knew playing D&D weren't like clubs and of that level
right,
or whatever. But the way they were treated was pretty common in high schools, right?
yeah.
The other show I would recommend is the last episode of Freaks and Geeks called Discos and Dragons, I think it's called. And look, if you have a place where you can go and be who you are and have fun doing it, what's not to love? So
Right.
I'm very excited about it. I think they did a fantastic job on 5e. And then you have things like D&D Beyond, Roll 20, these new tools that are coming up just to make your game better and easier to play.
I know Roll20 helped a lot of people, especially during the pandemic. That I know it came out a couple of years before the pandemic, but when the pandemic hit, all of a sudden people had a way to connect with each other
Right.
remotely,
It brought
and
a lot of D&D groups back together
yeah,
as
yeah,
people had moved out of town or whatever.
it
And
changed the game.
and so we were using Roll 20. Then we went back around the table and we have a whiteboard that we would draw on, and I had typewriter keys with numbers that we use for monsters and stuff. And it just wasn't singing for us. And we finally dropped that. And now we just plug in the big screen TV. We don't even have it on the table. We have it on the wall. We plug it in. We all have our tokens that we can move around when he goes to a new map and stuff. And the game got richer. So I love this stuff, and the fact that you can do it, and it's going to help you keep in mind all the things you have, all the abilities you have. I think it's been a godsend, and I think 5e is a hell of a system. They've done a really good job with it, and most of the expansions that I've seen, like Tasha's and Xanathars and all that, they're really good. These There's a lot of talent working in this world, in this D&D world right now. I think it's great. I think it's great. What's not to like? What's not to like if you can bring people around the table and be yourself,
Yeah,
or be someone completely different than yourself. Put on a different face and just play act. What's not to
right,
like?
right. Well, world building. I know you have opinions about world building. It's one of your favorite things, as you've
It
said.
is my favorite thing to do as a writer.
So when you well, first when you began, back in the late 80s. What were your what were your ideas about the world you inherited and how you would expand it? I know you signed on for one book originally, but you did some things in that one book that made people want more and more and more.
Yeah, but here's the thing. The thing that I like, I didn't know the Forgotten Realms when I signed on to do the Forgotten Realms. They weren't out yet at all. Um, the only thing that I got when I was writing my book was Doug Niles' book, the first one, Dark Walker on Moonshade. The box set wasn't out, but I got the original maps from Ed. And what I loved when I finally got my hands on that gray box set of the Forgotten Realms was how much of the world was little defined or undefined. So what that just did is it gave you the perfect base to put your games in. But as a writer, it gave me carte blanche. When I We spent 2 weeks trying to figure out where I could put my book to not bump into all the other projects, game and book, that they had in the world. And I finally got frustrated and I looked at the map and I said, "You see the little line above the spine of the world?" And Mary Kurtzoff said, "I think that's a typo." I said, "Well, leave it because that's Icewind Dale." She said, "Cool, that's Icewind Dale. It's yours." And they let me have a drow sidekick who became a main character, which surprised everybody over there. But um, the beauty of the realms for writers in the early days were that you were free. It's almost like writing a book about World War II, right? You have to know the geography.
Mhm.
You have to know like where the Nazis are, where the Axis powers are, where the Allies are. You have to know all that stuff. And you have to know the technology. In the Forgotten Realms, you have to know the various powers in the areas you might be going into, if they're already established. And you have to know the technology. And by that I mean the game rules. That's the technology of the world. The lightning bolt of it is the M16 of the Forgotten Realms. I think they were using M6. No, they probably weren't using M16s when they. Yeah, they were, because that was in the '60s when they had created it. But anyway, um, so you know the technology, you know the world boundaries, and you have a place where your whole cloth. When I was going to write, after they decided that, they told me at the end of Halfling's Gem that was it. We were going to go on. If I was going to keep working on be new characters, people are done with these characters. They said in 1989, and they were wrong. But when they came back and said people want to know where Dritz came from, I looked at I think it was either the Fiend Folio or Unearthed Canada. It had like a 2-page drow entry. I had the old modules: Queen of the Demon Web Pits, Descent to the Depths of the Earth, Fall to the Drow. But that was it, and they really didn't flesh it all out. And I said, "Well, what else are you going to send me for the Drow?" And they said, "That's it. That's all we have." And I said, "Well, what do you want from me?" They said, "Create the Drow in the Realms." And we had the signposts that they were considered evil by the surface races. They worshipped Loth in, and I said, in that city. And then by '91, Elistray was out there. The idea of good drow isn't just mine. I mean, Elistray's been around for 30 years,
Right.
right? Because it makes sense, because individual agency, reasoning beings. Um, and so I got to play. I got to just do my thing, and nobody was bothering me. So I got to create Icewind Dale. I got to create Men's of Baranzan. I got to create Spirit Soaring, the lands that Catherley was in. I got to create Mithril Hall. I got to take the concept of Gauntlgrim and make it a real place. I got to create now the North, Caladay, the far north, North Pole. And there really weren't any restrictions on it. It was like creating my Demon Wars world. Same process. And the process I use, by the way, is I just know history. I know cultures. I understand how people react together. Cultures don't happen in a vacuum. They happen because of geography. They happen because of availability of needs, right? I mean, if you live in a super hot area that's full of berries and fruits and stuff, you're probably not building castles,
Right.
right? If you live in a really cold area, when you have to go out there and hunt for your food against animals that are going to kill you if you don't do it right, you're probably going to build technology that transfers to war. These are the kind of things that just happen in our history. So I study history. I read books. I read about cultures. and I understand the flavor of them, and that's what I look to put in the cultures I put in my fantasy world, so that they, in the person's heart, it should seem new and fresh, but somehow familiar. So
And
if you're reading Menzo Berenzon and you happen to have watched The Godfather recently, you probably understand where it came from. And if you're reading Calais and you know anything about pre-Renaissance Italy, you probably know where Calais, a lot of it came from.
so I think when a lot of people think world building, they're thinking the terrain, the vegetation, um, the climate,
Yeah,
and then other folks might think, well, world building is really about characters and the societies that are built. But what you're saying, and I completely I'm latching on to what you're saying here is that the one affects the other. That
absolutely.
the terrain, the climate can affect how a society is built and how that society behaves and how that society defends itself, and then those things then become political systems and then those political systems then become warring factions with other political systems
Yep.
and and it all
Or they become
started with
trading partners with other political systems.
exactly.
When I did my Demon Wars world, I started with the gemstone magic. Now, I didn't create gemstone magic. I mean, that there are people that buy crystals they think are powerful in our world today. This is something that's been throughout history, where their gems are, there are magical properties associated with gems in fables and folklore throughout our history
Sure.
as a species. And there are some properties that, like, I don't think people, if you went in the cave full of giant crystals, it would be really hot. They throw off energy. That's true. That's reality. There are caves you can't go in and stay in for more than a few minutes, or you will die because of the crystals. Um, so I had this idea for gemstone magic, and I figured out which gemstone would do what, how you could combine them, and everything. And then I had to figure out, well, how are you going to get them? So I came up with a world that had a ring, a noted ring around it, and every now and then, like, we have the Perseid meteor showers. They would have showers of gemstones from above, but only in certain places. And the gemstones came down and they had magic. They had energy that you could tap, which is magic to them. And they, one group figured out how to treat the stones when they get them fresh, basically, and preserve them to hold the magic in it. Well, that became the main church of the world, the Abelican church, because look at these guys. They have magic. They talk to God, right? So then you have the Abelican church, and that structure built up. What would that mean for the kings and queens around? What would that mean? How would the church control the kings and queens?
Right.
Oh, you're sick? We have a gemstone that can heal that. You should let us build that chapel over there, right? Then, as I expand the world, like when I did the Coven series, well, sure as heck, you find out in another part of the same continent, there are crystal caves that emanate magic, and there are witches that have learned how to tap those energies. So it's the same magic system, but being used a little bit differently. And out of that grew the cultures of the area. You have all these tribes around a lake. You have another tribe that lives up on the mountain. You can't live up on the mountain without magic. You're at 13,000 feet in a place that's, you know, cold at times, and
Right.
6 feet of snow will fall. You will die. You can't live up there, but you have magic. And you have a magical area that defies the elements because of the power of the crystals. Well, what does that mean? It means you have a group of people living up on a mountain, a tribe living up on the mountain that has an enormous advantage over the fishermen who live down by the lake. And the cultures get defined by that. And the attitudes of the characters get defined by that. And in that series, as with the Dritz series, there was someone, a witch named Owlin, who I love dearly, might be my favorite character to write right now, who decided this isn't right. They're not what they told me. These people down there were monsters. They're not. They're people. What are we doing? And Again, individual agency in a world of magic created around it, that magic that has set boundaries, so there's no Deus Ex Machina moment about to happen, and makes sense and logic, and then you have to make the technology of that world work with the magic. Because like if I can throw a lightning bolt, why am I going to design a gun?
Right.
But if only a few people can throw the lightning bolts, maybe the other people are tired of getting hit by lightning bolts, so they design guns.
Right.
Right? If I can flick my fingers and light up the logs in the fireplace, I don't need matches. Technology and magic replace each other. Back the first book I wrote was called Echoes of the Fourth Magic, and the fourth magic was technology. Um, because I've always been interested in fantasy worlds of how the world develops along the same lines as our world.
Right.
Culturally, a lot of the worlds seem to be very similar, but you have magic replacing invention. And so, to anyone who's a writer who wants to build, anyone listening who's a writer who wants to go and build a world, I strongly recommend you go find the 1970s series, the PBS 13 parters that they were doing. There were three that I strongly suggest every world builder look at. The first one would be Sagan's Cosmos, just because everyone should watch Sagan's Cosmos.
Yeah.
Second would be Connections, which is really powerful. But the third one, the one that most influences me, is called The Ascent of Man, and it's by Jacob Bronowski. And what Bronowski does is he looks at the history of mankind. Instead of going war to war, battle to battle, empire to empire, he goes invention to invention to show how we went from rubbing sticks together to make fire to building nuclear bombs. And it's absolutely brilliant. And it's 13 parts. I wish they would. I don't think it's been remastered, and it really should, because the sound is still, it's all analog. It's
Right.
the thing's, 50 plus years old, but it is wonderful. I still have the book. I studied it in college. This is where it all got me going. I'm looking at the world differently.
I love it. A lot of people think about fantasy writing, and to them there's an argument between, are you a world builder fantasy author, or are you a character development fantasy author?
Yeah.
In hearing you talk, they're closely intertwined, and you almost cannot separate your world building from your character development.
I don't know that that's always true with authors. We all do it differently.
Yeah.
You ask an author how they write a book. Ask 10 authors how they write the book, and you'll get at least 9 different answers.
Sometimes you get 15 different answers.
For me, I love building the world. But the way I show the reader the world is I fall in love with the character and let the character take me on the journey with the reader. So I see the world through the eyes of my characters, period, when I'm writing. And a dear friend who, one of the most influential writers of the 20th century, became my dear friends from my hometown, Robert Cormier, I Am the Cheese, The Chocolate War.
Oh, yeah.
Most of us read him in school. He kind of took me under his wing when I got my first rejection letters. And we had this long conversation. I called him up because his phone number was the phone number in I Am the Cheese was his actual phone number at that time. And he would visit the schools and stuff, so I'd see him. And I actually called him up, and he kept me on the phone for a couple of hours. And,
Wow.
what he drummed into my head was character is more important than story. If you have a great story with terrible characters, nobody cares. If you have a mediocre story but people care about your characters, they'll love the book.
Right.
And I believe him. And so for me, when I'm writing, the most important thing is development of the characters as they're going through this world I made that makes sense. So yeah, it's both.
Love it.
But I can't speak for other authors because we all do it differently.
Doug asks, if you were to start building a new world today, where would you start? The geography, history, culture, magic, or something else? Or can they be separated?
Well, I am building a new world today and expanding my Demon Wars. And what was most important in that world was geography at this point, because I already have the magic system, right? And so basically, I had to do a lot of research about um, the Americas and the Caribbean and pirates,
Yeah.
and but geography plays a huge part of that, right? Um, so for that one, it was but it depend on what I'm doing. Like Demon War started with magic because I really wanted
Yeah.
to do something. I really wanted a magic system that was mine. That I also turned into an RPG once upon a time too, and we played for 6 years and had a blast. Um, but I wanted to start with the magic system, and then as I tried to figure out how do these gems, how do they get them? If the gemstones are magical, couldn't anybody like pick up a diamond and make it light or dark, or pick up a? It's not just gemstones, minerals. Pick up some graphite and hit you with a lightning bolt. Um, but no, because of the geography, and the geography determined the cultures. The geography leading to who controlled the magic determined the way the cultures developed. All tied together.
Wow. So Bob, having these worlds that you have built or have expanded um, for so many years, are there things that you do to keep pushing the boundaries? And you talked about those early days where the map, you took a typo on a map and created a whole society out of it. With it have if it has been expanding so much over the last few decades that you would think that, the worlds were becoming kind of set in stone. Are there things that you can do to keep pushing those boundaries even in a well-established world?
Some characters in Starlight Enclave found one character in particular got cast into the far north, the very far north, and couldn't understand why the sun wouldn't set, and it drove her crazy. So yeah, I mean, I found a place in the realms that nobody was at, the polar north. I created a glacier out of the body of one of the wind gods who lay down there, and the glacier grew around him. I filled it with a society that built logically up there as they were trying to hide from the rest of the world, and another society of Nemesis on the other end of the glacier, and built the new world in the Forgotten Realms. There's nothing in the Forgotten Realms like Caladay or the
S
Kadij Glacier. There's nothing in the realms like that. I found a place to hide. I always find places to hide. Only my grandkids can find me.
So you can come up with a scenario and then think, "Well, what could support this scenario?" And then the what if game just starts playing in your mind?
Yeah, yeah. What do cultures in the cold north look like? The very cold north. Uh, they look very different than the
Yeah,
cultures in the temperate zones, which look very different from the cultures in the equatorial zones, generally speaking.
right.
Um, but how do you have scarcities up north, right? But I have a big population up there. But how would it support it? It's the frozen north. You're not going to go out and hunt enough to. Well, that's what magic comes. You can create food if you're a priest, but you're creating boring food. Well, maybe they find out now not to create boring food, and so they don't have to go hunting. But they have other things they're going to do instead. And they fiercely protect their city, but it's not really under assault except from one group that every now and then. So what do they do to stay sharp? What do they do to stay ready for battle? Well, they have a great way of staying ready for battle. And it's based on the historical, there's a historical precedent for exactly what I did in there with the blood sport that they do. Um, Again, it just keeps building on itself. Well, what would they do about their clothes? And the logical clothing for up north would be sealskin. It's so dense, right? But you're not going to go kill all the seals. How many seals are there to kill?
Right.
It's frozen. It's not on the ocean. But we have magic. Oh, look. And, oh, we're drow, so we have spiders. And that helps too. But they don't worship them the way the Lothians do. They
You
use them.
you talked about your Demon Wars, series, earlier, and does having another property like that to work in, does that help you on your other series that you're right? I guess what I'm asking is, does taking a break from one series, working on something else, then when you come back, are you able to look at it with fresh eyes, with a new imaginative
Yeah, or I can try something out in a minor scale in one world and then bring it to the other. Like I did a story that was Audible exclusive called One Eyed Jacks, and it was about Jarl Axel
yes,
and Luskin and about pirates and about having to deal with some really bad developments with the pirates. They were
yeah,
getting very bold and they were getting unstoppable. And he had to deal with it if he wanted to keep his hold on Luskin. But after I did that story, and that came to me because I was working on the next Demon Wars series, which is Pirates. So I did on a small scale and tried out some things, started doing my research, and then of course I just bring it much bigger. It's different. The arms race in Demon Wars on the ships is very different than what was going on in the world with Jell Axel. But yeah, I mean, you bring things back and forth. I can do more things with my Demon Wars world than I can with the realms. I don't need someone's permission to blow up a city. I just do it, right? Uh,
right.
I I think the books serve a different purpose creatively for me. They're bigger in scope, and don't fall in love with too many characters because not many of them are going to make it out alive, and they're not coming back in Demon Wars. They're gone. They're gone. You might get a ghost back short for a very brief visit, but they're gone. Um, so yeah, they give me two halves of the creativity I want.
I love it. And if you're worried about whether Bob Salvatore will kill off one of your favorite characters or not, remember he's the man who killed Chewbacca.
We don't talk about Chewie. No, no, no. He's a
Bob,
Disney princess. I'm off the hook. Leave me alone.
there you go. There you
They
go.
made me do it. They did.
Bob, I know you've got a busy day of promotions that's still yet to do. Glacier's Edge, book two of The Way of the Drow, is out now everywhere. Go grab it. And The Tao of Dritz comes out in a couple weeks.
September 20th.
September 20th. All right. We're going to put links where folks can grab both of those in the notes of this episode. Bob, always a pleasure catching up with you. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Absolutely, Hank. Thanks for having me back.